Hi, I'm Greg Galdabini, and this is Bryan Goettel with freeenterprise.com. We're here to talk about March Madness, not the kind of madness that's happening on the basketball court right now, but the kind of madness that's happening in government agencies. With all the mind-numbing red tape out there, we thought it was time to take a look at the most maddening regulations of all. So starting tomorrow, we're going to ask each and every one of you to vote for the not-so-sweet 16 regulations. So let's get started and take a look at who's in this year's bracket.
Well, Greg, I got to say, looking at this bracket, it has me really excited to see acronyms back in the field. UCLA is clearly not what they once were. VCU, not the story they were a year ago. But I will tell you, looking at this, how you cannot single out the NLRB is beyond me. I mean, their ambush election rule, this is a no-brainer to head to the Final Four. It's straight out of the labor playbook, speeding up union elections, not allowing employers to communicate with their employees. It seems like a no-brainer to put them in the Final Four, if you ask me.
Well, listen, Bryan, I'm not going to argue with that, but let's take a look at some of the other powerhouse regulations in this year's bracket. It's a strong field, and I'm looking at it now, and I'll tell you, I expect the grandfathered health plans to make a strong run. I mean, this is an administration that hung its hat on the, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it, but we're finding out that that's simply not true. Actually, if you're in a plan whose benefits change, that plan will then lose its grandfathered status, and that can happen overnight. Literally the plan you're in now, it's grandfathered, next year probably won't be. So I think that's a very strong contender.
It does make perfect sense that my older colleague would pick something that has grandfathered in the title, so I'll let that slide, but I got to go back to the acronyms, and the other one that I think is a shoo-in for the Final Four is the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I mean, are you kidding me? It's the most unaccountable agency that's maybe ever been created. There's Congress has no say really in what they do. They have a $500 million budget. I mean, this is outrageous. I mean, if you're looking at the environment for a game in this first round, knowing what the fans are going to be like, booing the CFPB is going to be off the charts, and I think it's a no-brainer that they get the Final Four. All right, grandfather, or Greg, as some people like to call you. So it's easy for us to talk about the no-brainers that are going to make it to the Final Four, but I'm looking at this bracket. There's some interesting calls for some of the ones that just snuck in there, and I feel like there's some pretty glaring omissions, but I see there's some that you feel pretty strongly about.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, Bryan, I'm looking at this bracket right now, and you got to give the cooling water intake structure rule a shot.
Wow, I didn't see that one coming.
Right. Now, this is a pretty arcane rule, but what this would do is it would make companies with these sort of structures jump over hoops and to try to protect fish. Now, listen, I'm all for fish, right? And so are you.
Yeah, I love my fish.
But let's get something straight here. This reg is just extremely burdensome because the EPA really failed to incorporate the cost of complying with it. So they don't do a jobs impact on it at all.
Yeah.
It's just sort of something they threw out there without even thinking it through, and this is going to have a devastating impact. So I got to tell you, with this particular reg, I think this could be the Norfolk State of the tournament.
Wow, bold call,
Sleeper.
Salmon hater.
It's
okay.
sleeper.
Fair enough. That's a decent argument, but I look at this bracket. I don't know what the committee was thinking. How do you leave out farm dust? The EPA wanted to regulate dust. I mean, we all know we have so much control over dust.
It's everywhere.
Yeah,
it's right here.
Yeah, it is. That's something like dust. But I mean, granted, this reg is kind of off the table for the moment, but it could get back in the cards at any point, and how you leave this team out of the field when it can sneak up on absolutely anybody at any given time is beyond me.
That's a good point. Look for them next year, huh? Maybe. A strong run in the NIT.
They're rebuilding.
Yeah. All right, Bryan. We've talked about some of the favorites, some of the dark horses, but when you're filling out your bracket, who do you have as winning the whole enchilada, the most maddening regulation of them all?
All right, call me boring, but I don't see any way that they lose. I got to go the CFPB. They were a rising power a year ago, and now it's just kind of terrifying. Totally unaccountable. A single director that nobody really knows what they're doing. This agency's set to come out with so many regulations. Honestly, they could probably host their own NIT next year, CBI, some other random tournament nobody's ever heard of. It just seems to me that the CFPB is just built to dominate this field.
Typical, Bryan, that you would pick the favorite, but I am going with the dark horse, okay? It's I2P2.
Excuse me?
Yeah, well, it's one I haven't mentioned earlier, but this is one that I am really honing in on. Why? Because it's just so outrageous. People aren't familiar with it, but this is a regulation where companies would have to fix workplace hazards. Even if they don't even exist, they would have to identify them and then fix them. It's just asinine, and I cannot believe that this regulation is not getting more play among the pundits. I see them as a strong, up and down bench-wise. They're great, and I think they're going to run the table.
Yeah, have fun with your deep team. I'm still riding the CFPB all the way.
The tournament kicks off on Thursday.
And for those of you with the internet, log on to freeenterprise.com or find American Free Enterprise on Facebook and cast your votes on all the matchups.